Alright everyone, let's go and take a look at the Google Pixel 6a and the Google Pixel 5a and see how both these phones compare to each other. Now Google did send me actually out both of these phones, this one last year, this one right now. If you want to buy either one of these ones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, you can help support the channel at the same time. Now side by side, there definitely are some differences, and I will say the Pixel 6a is a pretty big upgrade, but it's also a downgrade in a few different areas. Now with the Pixel 5a on the front, you do have a pretty decent 6.34-inch OLED display, and when it came out, I thought it was a pretty good panel. I think it was a pretty good upgrade from the Pixel 4a, but it's still a pretty good panel, hole punch display on the top left corner, but it looked very similar to the Pixel 5, and I will still say for $449, this was a pretty decent phone. Now on the front of the Pixel 6a, on the other hand, we are getting a little bit of a smaller 6.1-inch OLED panel. So it's a little bit smaller. It's the same resolution at 1080p. The PPI is actually a little bit higher here, but visibly, I don't know if one panel looks way better or way worse than the other one. I think both of them look almost exactly the same, but do keep in mind the Pixel 6a is a little bit smaller. Hole punch display on the top as well, and overall, both phones are very similar on the front. Now on the sides, this is where things start getting a little bit different. So if you look on the side of the Pixel 6a, you can kind of see we are starting to get a little bit of a flat side. Personally, I think this was a really good touch, and I feel like the phone is much more premium than the Pixel 5a. The 5a was supposed to be, I guess, built out of aluminum, but the Pixel 6a feels a lot more premium, especially when we get to the back of the phones. I mean, this is a massive difference. The Pixel 6a has a complete glass back on this device, where the Pixel 5a, I guess, had this aluminum build. I think it looked okay, but it didn't feel as premium as even like the Pixel 5. The Pixel 6a, on the other hand, with its glass back, looks very, very good. Especially, I mean, it looks almost like exactly like the Pixel 6. You probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference, to be honest. Now, dual camera setups on the top between both of them as well. A little bit of a different setup in terms of the camera too. No wireless charging between both have IP certification, which is great. But I do think that the build quality overall, like I mentioned before, on something like the Pixel 6a is astronomically better than the Pixel 5a. Personally, I feel like the Pixel 5a, the build quality was probably one of the worst areas, but I do think with it, being $449, for it being the jump up from the Pixel 4a, it was a pretty big upgrade. I think the Pixel 4a didn't feel good at all. Pretty much fixed that. We also had a fingerprint sensor on the back of the 5a, where the fingerprint sensor on the Pixel 6a is now embedded within the display, which is really, really nice. Now, in terms of the future of both these phones, the Pixel 5a started off with Android 11, which I think is a great thing. These are both Pixels, so they're going to be lasting for quite a bit of time. There's probably going to be a large development community behind both these phones too. But because the Pixel 6a is the newer, update over the Pixel 5a, chances are, not chances are, the Pixel 6a is going to be lasting longer than the Pixel 5a. This one is now starting off with Android 12, so if you wanted a phone that's going to last a longer amount of time, this is definitely the phone for you. Now, Google is no longer going to be selling the Pixel 5a at $449. If anything, you can buy this thing for much cheaper in the used market, but for this device taking this specific device's price tag, I think if you're looking at a Pixel 5a going up to the 6a, this is a really big upgrade. I think at least coming from not only from, the chipset and everything like that, but the build quality standpoint, especially when you consider the 6a is going to be lasting a longer time than the Pixel 5a, at least, starting off now. I think that's also a pretty big jump. Now let's go and do a speed comparison between both these phones as well. The Google Pixel 6a has that new Google Tensor chipset. It's not brand new, it was, came out last year. And it also has 6 gigabytes of RAM within it. On the Pixel 5a, on the other hand, we have that Qualcomm Snapdragon. This is the big difference. Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset on this one. 6 gigabytes of RAM on here too. But let's go and see how these two things compare. Is the Google Tensor chipset faster than this one? Let's go and find out. Okay, there we go. All the apps are not cleared out in the background, so I'm going to go and clear these ones out right here. These are all cleared out. Let's go and clear out on the Pixel 5 6a, and they're both cleared out as well. 6a is here, Pixel 5a is here, so let's get into it. Phone calls, 3, 2, 1. Kind of the same thing, not that big of a difference. Hopping out of these applications, kind of the same thing. Messages, 3, 2, 1. Almost the same thing too. There really wasn't that big of a difference. Play Store 3, 2. Actually, I won't do that one. Camera 3, 2, 1. I'm not connected to Wi-Fi here. Now, this is the second time I got into that panel. I don't know why I had to go through that panel twice. Hopping out of here, we have some of these third-party applications. So let's get into it. Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm ready. If any pop-ups come up, I'm going to go ahead and click out of them. I already opened up all these applications on both, so there shouldn't be any pop-ups. Let's go and see. So you can see the Pixel 6a did get into this game much faster than the Pixel 5a. Now, I don't know if this was because this one is, newer and I just opened it up on this one, whereas this one was a little bit older, but there was quite a bit of a difference here. Now, one of them is playing a sound. I don't know which one it was. It was this one. Let's go and get into BOFA. 3, 2, 1. It took a little bit longer to load into it on the Tensor chipset, but it did load into the application faster on the 6A than on the 5A. Hopping out of this one, let's go and get into Instagram. 3, 2, 1. Pixel 6A, like, so much faster than the 5A there. Twitter. 3, 2, 1. I think the Pixel 5 was a little bit faster there. Very interesting. Snake versus blocks. 3, 2, 1. And the 5A was faster there than the Pixel 6A. Very, very interesting. I don't know why that even happened, but it's very interesting how even now the Tensor chipset, for it having several months of upgrading and adjusting, it's still a little bit slower than the 765G on this one sometimes. Not every time, but sometimes. Quizlet 321. And I don't want to overreact. See, sometimes it is faster there, so we do have to give it the benefit of the doubt here and there. Let's do Snapchat 321. But still, I feel like, for Google hyping up this chipset as much as they did, I feel like it should be a little bit faster. Now, those are some of the third-party applications. I guess there's some applications between both, like Clock 321. Kind of the same thing, too. Not really a crazy big difference. Contacts 321. Okay, that one was a little bit different on both. Let's go and hop out of here. Let's go and get into Google Drive 321. I think we're going to get into 2 different panels here as well. Not logged in or not signed in with Wi-Fi here. And we're just going to go ahead and try one more application. We'll try Calculator 321. At least with the Tensor chipset, it's a little bit faster. So one thing I would definitely tell you when it comes down to the speed between both of these, I don't really think the Tensor chipset is still that much faster than this phone right here, which is very strange. The same amount of RAM between both, so RAM management should be the same, but I saw this in my Pixel 6 comparison too. When I did my Pixel 6 versus Pixel 5a, I was kind of seeing the Pixel 5a was still doing pretty good compared to the Pixel 6 and sometimes even beating it. So I'm just kind of surprised that even several months later, the Pixel chipset or the Pixel 5a and the Tensor chipset, it's still not updating, or Google's not making those many adjustments with this chipset. It should be faster by now, and it's still a little bit faster here and there, a little bit faster on the Pixel 5a. That's kind of how to somewhat sum up this specific comparison with the speed. Now, if we can quickly hit on the cameras, this is not a full camera comparison, but I will do one at some point. You can see that we pretty much have a dual camera setup on both these phones as well. They're both wide and ultra-wide sensors, but they are a little bit different. So let me go ahead and explain. Both can do 4K at 60, which is nice. They both can do 1080p on the front, which is still kind of strange, 8 megapixel sensors on the front. But now the Pixel 5a, which had a 12.2 megapixel wide-angle lens and a 16 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, now went down on the Pixel 6a to a 12.2 megapixel wide-angle lens and a 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor. So it did get downgraded a little bit in terms of the megapixel count. Not really that big of a deal. I don't really think anybody's going to care too much. As I mentioned before, though, for so many years, or for as long as I can remember, the Pixel cameras have been really solid. And then with the Pixel 4a, if you all remember, or with the Pixel 4 for that matter, Google really butchered it. I feel like they could have done a way better job, but with something like the Pixel 5a camera, I think this thing is still pretty good. I feel like for you, if you want to go ahead and get this thing and just take quick photos and kind of move on from there, you are expecting this camera to not be that amazing, but for at least having an ultra-wide sensor is really nice. Now, I don't even think it's the best ultra-wide sensor ever, but for this thing having it for a budget-tier phone was really nice, and like I mentioned, coming from the Pixel 4a, this was a really big upgrade, and I do think from the 4a to the 5a, from a camera standpoint, was a bigger upgrade than the 5a to the 6a, at least from the few things that I've tested here and there. Now with the Pixel 6a, as I've mentioned, this is a good camera too. This is not a bad camera by any means at all. But as I mentioned before, the 4a to the 5a bigger upgrade than the 5a to the 6a. This having a little bit of a lower count megapixel, I mean, I don't think it's a big deal, but it is very strange they did that. I feel like they could have kept the same amount of megapixel count, and I don't want to harp on that too much. I feel like the overall zooming in and zooming out is pretty much the same. I don't know why on these specific Android phones they're still super glitchy, but I've seen that on pretty much all different Android phones for sure. Photos and everything you're going to take between both are awesome. Still a little glitchy of an experience, but that's totally okay. You have 4K 60 on both of them on the back, which is more than enough for me. And I will say the Pixel 6a camera is probably the better one just because it is the newer one with the Google Tensor chipset, so it is going to be a little bit better in that area. But I still feel like for however many years Google has been making budget tier phones now, I think they could take it up a little bit of a better notch, to be honest. And I'm hoping with the next iteration of Pixels, they knock it out of the park. I feel like the Pixel 6 Pro did a good job, but when it kind of is all said and done, how does the Pixel 6a compare to something like the Pixel 5a? And at least in my opinion, I feel like with something like the Pixel 5a, And I feel like with something like the Pixel 6a, this is a pretty good phone overall. And I do think as a complete whole, it is a pretty good upgrade from the Pixel 5a. It fixed a lot of things that I didn't really like about the Pixel 5a. I feel like the build quality really wasn't that great. And that was really it. That was my only complaint about this phone. It may be like the performance here and there, but as you saw, the Tensor chipset on this thing still was kind of getting outbeaten by the Snapdragon 765G on this specific phone. But I feel like the build quality is what really Google was focusing on. I feel like this is going to cannibalize a lot of Pixel 6 sales, but now with something like the Pixel 5a, if you can snag this thing for like less than 300, if you can get this thing for around 200, probably less than that, this is a really good price tag for a phone like this. It has a bigger battery than the Pixel 6a. It's probably going to give you a little bit of a it's going to give you a really solid experience for the price tag. It may not be a better experience than the Pixel 6a, but for the price, this is a solid phone. I feel like with the Pixel 6, Google did a tremendous job with the build quality. I feel like it's almost like a flagship if you think about it, but it's missing 120 hertz. The Pixel 5a doesn't have it either. It doesn't necessarily feel like, it doesn't really perform like a flagship, but it feels like a flagship. And for a budget tier phone at $449, I think this is a pretty decent priced phone for this type of device. So that's kind of how both these phones compare in my opinion. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. If you want to pick them up, like I mentioned, links are down in the description as well. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.